with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Thursday, May 6, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, justice writer at Vox, Ian Millhiser, on his new book, The Agenda. Also on the program today, the Biden administration commits to waive vaccine patents for the rest of the world. Meanwhile, pharma's stocks plunge in its wake. Federal judge vacates the CDC national eviction moratorium. Liz Cheney about to be booted from Republican leadership. Okay. Adams edges Yang in the latest New York City mayoral poll. Mitch McConnell says he's 100% focused on obstructing Joe Biden's agenda. Bipartisanship, whither, where art thou? I don't know what that was. Columbia police fire into protests, at least 24 deaths, over 80 missing. The Labor Department makes it easier for workers to sue over misclassification by rolling back a Trump-era rule. Speaking of which, gig companies spend at least $1 million in lobbying Congress to reject the PRO Act. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being here on this Thursday. Joining me, as always, Emma Vigeland is here. Hello, Emma. How are you?
Hello. I am well.
You look like you're about to start laughing.
Well, I don't know. I feel sometimes like it's Groundhog Day because you ask me how I am every morning, but
I'm checking. It's a polite thing to do.
It is polite, but we hang out or are working together about 2 hours before the show starts.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe it changes. I just checking in on you.
I always say this when the show starts. I always perk up, get a little rush, and have even more fun. So.
Yeah,
show improves my mood, which is shocking.
Just want to see if you're better than you were before, which apparently you are. So that's great. Glad to hear it. We're gonna come up with another.
You really don't. I don't know why. I'm having some sort of fixation. It's like a manifestation of my low grade anxiety.
All right. Well, there you go. So there we finally gotten the answer.
That's a very specific answer, actually.
Exactly. Well, how are you? You've got low grade anxiety.
Well, it usually comes out at night before I'm supposed to go to bed. So I'm good. I'm good at this point.
Starting you off early today. The sooner you start, the quicker you can recover.
Yeah, I guess.
Folks, lot to talk about today. Joe Biden sort of dancing around. Trying to deal with the fractures that are appearing within the Democratic coalition or the Democratic caucus, frankly, regarding taxation, regarding expenditures. Joe Manchin apparently not taking Mitch McConnell seriously when Mitch McConnell says 100% committed to obstruction, because there's no evidence that Mitch McConnell would ever commit to such a project. We have no experience whatsoever with the idea that Mitch McConnell would be 100% committed to obstruction and has no interest in bipartisanship. Therefore, Joe Manchin being skeptical about what Mitch McConnell says, that makes total sense in some other alternate universe, which makes no sense whatsoever. Meanwhile, on the, this is a twofer. Actually, it's sort of a threefer for us. We always like to check in with Fox and Friends.
Right.
And the reason is because they're a good way to take a temperature as to what the talking points are going to be for the day with the Republican Party. But they do so in a fun and light way that it makes it much more fun to enjoy.
Fun, that term is being used quite loosely.
It's loose. I mean, although like yesterday, we talked about Brian Kilmeade attacking a 13-year-old sixth grader who was talking, maybe 12-year-old sixth grader who was talking about...
Who pwned him?
Yeah, who said the most obvious thing in the world, that the new president is doing a better job in dealing with COVID than the old president. That is, by anyone who is... at least in sixth grade, not a controversial statement.
Kilmeade's brain has not developed past that point. So.
He has regressed. But meanwhile, this was on Fox and Friends today. It was notable for a couple of reasons. One, it is an incredibly restrictive and disenfranchising law signed into, bill signed into law by DeSantis in Florida, Ron DeSantis. Two, it was part of Ron DeSantis's run for president in 2024. Mark my words on this.
Be afraid of that, by the way.
And be concerned.
He could be actually someone that makes some noise.
Three, it was one of the most egregious examples, unabashed examples of propaganda that one could imagine. This isn't just Fox News is covering the signing of this bill. DeSantis had excluded all local media from covering the signing of this bill so that Fox could have an exclusive. And it wasn't just we're covering this, we're actually building it into a segment. And so...
no local outlets.
No.
Even though this is a Florida bill, he's not the president of the United States, which would still be ridiculous going on national TV. This is should be for, local media should have access to.
Yeah, you can't trust that local fake news. You got to go to the multinational corporation owned by the Australian reactionary.
And let's be clear, the argument here is that we're doing this despite the fact that you're going to hear DeSantis say I don't know if Fox and Friends has an official job in the DeSantis administration, if they still refer to themselves as Fox guests in this hosts in this segment. But they say your 2020 election went off fine, but now we need to pull back from providing so much access during COVID. Well, why? We know why.
Because more Democrats voted by mail than Republicans in Florida.
And so DeSantis wants to show off his Trump bona fides by holding up his poster. So let's go to this clip. It really is stunning.
After the pandemic, Governor, a lot of people loosened up the rules because a lot of people didn't want to come out of the house. There were drop boxes, no excuse, mail-in balloting, and things to that nature. After years of struggling on Election Day and maybe extending it too long, most famously in 2000, you guys pretty much pulled it off flawlessly last time around, and you were able to get the results in. Now it's time for people to rein in and have a non-pandemic election. In over 30 states, they've made reforms. You're doing the same thing. What's going to be different about Florida's election in 2022? What are you about to sign?
So right now I have what we think is the strongest election integrity measures in the country. I'm actually going to sign it right here. It's going to take effect. So
there you go.
Bill is signed. And here's what it does. If you look, here's what it does. Now, we've always had voter ID. We're making sure we're making sure.
Do you hear what? Keep that image up there, because this is a little bit off point. Emma will tell you in a second, exactly what this does. But you hear Ducey say, "You came with graphics," and then he holds up a Florida leads on election integrity and transparency. The transparency is hilarious because literally they have shut out all of their local media from covering this.
Yeah, I know. We overuse the word Orwellian, but...
Exactly. But, I mean...
AKA Zuckerbucks?
Maybe I'm being a little conspiratorial here, but those colors on that graphic that Steve Doocy was like, oh, you came with your own graphics, are exactly the color palette. And every network uses a specific color palette. They have like a style guide when they do graphics. Those are exactly the Fox News graphics. I mean, you can see how integrated it looks with the rest.
You are just like, you've lost your mind. I mean, that is just like red, white, and blue. It looks like Bernie's font.
It might. I would be curious. I mean, since
they're sending a message to the radical communists.
Well, I just wonder if who did up that graphic. I mean, it is a Fox News exclusive. And it would be interesting if I was a reporter in Florida and I was a little annoyed. That would be my FOIA right there.
Mm-hmm.
Or I guess, it would be my FOIA. But tell folks exactly what he's signing there that he's so proud of.
So, right. I mean, the issue here is that, okay, as Fox just explained, nothing went wrong in Florida, but yet they have to overcorrect for something.
Got to rein it in.
Yeah, they've got to rein in something that they literally lead into the segment saying went fairly perfectly, I guess, during the presidential election the last time around. So what this does is the initial bill was supposed to ban drop boxes altogether. So the silver lining is that there still will be drop boxes in Florida, but there's tighter rules about where they can be. So they have to be at the official voting place, essentially, and there are limits on the hours where some drop boxes are able to be accessed, which will most likely prevent people who can't get out of work from voting from getting to the drop boxes. The boxes need to be staffed by an employee who's overseeing it, and when the box isn't staffed by an employee during official hours, there's going to be round-the-clock video surveillance of the drop boxes. It also just prevents what Republicans call ballot harvesting, which is this made-up term, essentially, or they've manipulated the term to sound a lot more evil, nefarious and evil than it is. They've limited, and the details, and I've read multiple articles, it hasn't laid it out quite yet about how they limit it, but it limits basically who is able to drop off someone else's ballot. So say it's an elderly person or a person who's poor, who doesn't have a car, who needs someone else to drop off their ballot for them. There are limitations on that. And now voters have to provide their driver's license, state ID number, or last four digits of their social security number when requesting a mail ballot, which is the same thing that you need to register to vote. And the other thing it does too, which I think is actually low-key a lot more destructive than, I don't know, the other parts that have been emphasized, is that it spreads out the votes on mail-in ballots, essentially. So oftentimes when you get a mail-in ballot, you'll have multiple elections on that ballot. They're dividing it up so that essentially you have to request multiple mail-in ballots, and that's just the start of it.
They're just all of these things are just roadblocks to what they say rein in. What are they reining in? They're reining in the number of people who are going to participate in the next election.
And I just want to add, it also took notes from the Georgia bill, which they ban the handing out of water within some sort of /food within areas of the ballot site. So it's all just an effort to make it more difficult, and it doesn't matter what those provisions are, essentially. I mean, yes, it does, but the fact that there's many of them just shows that they're trying to make it harder for specific people.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Ian Millhiser, senior correspondent at Vox, author of The Agenda, How a Republican Supreme Court is Reshaping America. We'll be right back after this. Today's sponsor is BetterHelp Online Counseling, and they're giving our audience 10% off their first month when you go to BetterHelp.com/Majority Report. What is BetterHelp? It gives you access to your own fully licensed and accredited therapist. You can get this access via phone. You can do it through a chat or video. A lot of therapists have long wait lists. Sometimes it can take weeks and months before they can see you. When you sign up with BetterHelp, they match you with a therapist based on your specific needs. You'll be communicating with them in less than 24 hours. I have to say that during COVID, obviously, and I have been seeing the same therapist for several years, we switched to teletherapy. I don't know what else you call it. We have FaceTime they have a, mechanism, and I like it. And I don't know if I'm going to go back into the office when it's okay to do so.
It's more
think
convenient.
For the most part, it's just as effective, if not more, in some respects, and it's certainly like much more convenient.
Yeah.
But that is, I have to say, that has been one of those things that we're going to come out of the pandemic, and I think is going to change. And the beauty of BetterHelp, however, is that once it connects you with a therapist, unlike the way that you traditionally find a therapist, if you don't think it's a good fit, you can switch to a new one at any time for any reason at no additional charge. There's nothing worse than finally going to see a therapist, deciding after a couple of sessions that it's no good, and then it's taking you several months to get back into therapy with a different one. That's one of the biggest plus of BetterHelp. They have thousands of licensed therapists. They're from all over the country. They have therapists with specialties that may not be available in your area. BetterHelp also tends to be more affordable than therapists you'd find through traditional means. You don't have to have insurance to use BetterHelp, and they have financial aid options for those who qualify. BetterHelp is giving everyone in our audience 10% off your first month when you go to BetterHelp.com/Majority Report. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Majority Report. BetterHelp.com/Majority Report. You can find the URL in our video description if you're watching on this on YouTube, or in our podcast description if you're getting it as a podcast. Okay, I want to welcome to the program senior correspondent at Vox, author of The Agenda: How a Republican Supreme Court is Reshaping America. Ian, welcome to the program. I'm here with Emma Vigeland.
Good to be here. Thanks so much.
Congratulations on the book. It is, in many respects, I think, you and I have spoken over the years, and so much of this stuff, you have educated this audience about things that have been coming down the pike, and we've sort of crossed that toll, and we're now, to belabor a metaphor, we have done the on-ramp and we're on the pike now. It is no longer coming down the pike. We are there. And the idea, the premise of your book is that Republicans no longer, in part because they can't maybe, but they no longer have to rely on legislating to fundamentally change Americans' relationship with government and with society in some respects. So just lay that down for us, and then we'll get into the specifics. You have really four, silos in which our society is really going to dramatically change. But just give us the overall premise.
Sure. So, I started writing this book at the end of kind of a lost decade in Congress. So from 2011, when Republicans took the House and basically denied President Obama a governing majority, until 2020, when the pandemic hit and, non-action became untenable, Congress basically did nothing. There's the Trump tax bill, but there was hardly any major legislation enacted for a decade. And in the same period, the Supreme Court dismantled campaign finance law. It hobbled the Voting Rights Act. It weakened the ban on sexual harassment. It held that religious liberty claims can be used to overcome employees' rights. It halted President Obama's Clean Power Plan, his most ambitious effort to fight climate change. It weakened unions. And then, lest you think it was all bad news, there was also the marriage equality decision in there. But like the point is that the Supreme Court became the locus of policymaking in the United States. Congress was unable to do anything. The president has fairly limited powers, and the Supreme Court is now working to limit the president's powers even more. And so the one unelected branch of government, and the branch where Republicans now have a 2/3 supermajority, has become the primary policymaking body in the United States. And, regardless of whether you like what they're doing or not, I think that's pretty scary because, we should want to be governed by the sort of people that we can throw out of office and not by unelected judges who serve for life.
And there's a certain irony there because ostensibly a lot of these members of the Supreme Court would ostensibly agree with you. But many of the things that you outline here, particularly in Chapter 2, is making it impossible in some ways for there to be for that to happen, where a government, someone who's been elected to office, the president and their administration, is really unable to execute a lot of policy because of the polarization we have in the country and the sort of the structural changes that are going to be that the Supreme Court's going to be involved in. And so let me just ask you that one more general question. The 6-3 court represents a danger, it seems to me, that is sort of fundamentally different, broadly speaking, than what we've had in the recent memory, because they are going to be tackling sort of some structural things that function like proxies. They're not going to necessarily decide on one narrow instance at the EPA, but they could end up promoting a doctrine or changing things in such a way that they're going to defang all agencies, and they're going to deny people the franchise to vote in some respects, and they're going to deny people access to the courts, and they're going to allow religion to trump some other sort of societal principles, all which seem to me to be very structural in what they're going to tackle.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the general thesis of the book is that the Supreme Court is making a two-pronged attack on democracy. And the first prong is that they're just going after voting rights. They're legitimizing partisan gerrymanders. They're dismantling the Voting Rights Act. The reason why you're seeing these voter suppression laws out of Georgia and Florida and probably Texas and Arizona very soon is because the lawmakers in those states know they can get away with it. And they can get away with it because the Supreme Court is telling them that they can get away with it. And at the same time that the court is dismantling voting rights so that it's harder and harder for the Democratic Party to compete fairly in elections, they are also dismantling the government's ability to function so that if someone like Joe Biden manages to slip through the cracks, despite all the efforts that are being made to prevent Democrats from voting, then he will be a very weak president. And so let me give you an example of how this works. There's two ways that Congress can regulate. One is they can just pass a law saying you must do this thing. So like if they want power plants to have less pollution, they could say you must install this device that reduces emissions. The problem with that approach is that technology changes, and if Congress had passed that kind of law in 1974, there would now be obsolete technology in all these power plants, and like the law actually might do more harm than good. So what Congress did instead is they passed the Clean Air Act. And the Clean Air Act says that power plants have to use the best available technology. That's the words of the statute, the best available technology to reduce emissions. And it is up to the EPA to determine what the best available technology is at any given moment. So they can constantly update its regulations to say, oh, there's this new thing, so now you have to use this. And the idea is it's still democratic. Congress still sets the policy that the best available technology should be used, but it's also dynamic. Congress doesn't have to go in and pass a new law every time that someone invents a new thing. And the Supreme Court is now trying to dismantle, and there are at least 5 votes for it, Congress's ability to delegate power to agencies in this way, or at least the Supreme Court wants to give itself a veto power over everything that is done to regulate by an agency. And that's, again, really troubling. You know, like I said, what we're seeing is a two-pronged attack on democracy. On the one hand, they want to make it very, very hard for certain people to cast a ballot. And on the other hand, they want to make it so that if someone like Joe Biden slips through, then Joe Biden isn't actually able to govern because the Supreme Court can veto anything that he tries to do.
I want you to spend a little more time on this, because this is the delegate the principle that you've outlined, is it the delegation? It escapes me at the moment. The delegation principle. What is it? The non-delegation.
Non-delegation doctrine is what conservatives call this veto power they want to give to the Supreme Court.
Will you just expand a little bit on the EPA is a great example, but give people a sense of the scope of what could this implicate, and when we've seen this in the past?
Yeah, so I mean, there's all kinds of laws that delegate power to agencies in this sort of way. You know, like the Labor Department has the power to decide who gets paid overtime regulations. You know, the Department of Health and Human Services has all kinds of powers to determine what sort of insurance we get, and like how doctors can't discriminate, and how hospitals have to be run, and what you have to do if you want Medicare, and so on and so forth. And I mean, all of this could potentially fall. I mean, let me give you an example of what I think is going to be the first major. I mean, this lawsuit has already been filed. It's making its way up through the courts now. There's a provision of the Affordable Care Act which says that health insurers have to cover certain preventive care, and then various agencies within the Department of Health and Human Services has the power to add items to this list of required coverage. And it's a long list. It's about 80 items. It's everything from like vision care for children to pap smears to birth control, various forms of cancer screening. You know, there's a lot of like very routine health procedures on this list. And there's a lawsuit right now that I think is going to prevail, which argues that it is illegal for Congress to give these agencies, you know, to give these bodies within the federal government the power to add items to this list. And once that's struck down, that means no more free birth control. That means no more free cancer screenings. That means no more free pediatric care. It means no more free a lot of things that we are all getting from our insurance company right now. So everyone's insurance is about to get a lot worse because of the Supreme Court.
And I just want to make sure that everybody understands that this is the reason why you want, in this instance, again, HHS to do that is like they're getting data coming in and saying, you know what? If folks have a regular colonoscopy, or they have a regular, new screening for this type of cancer, we can save X number of lives. And we've just found that out. And we know that Congress is never going to pass anything like that. Like, right? Like this is what I think is really important for people to understand here. The Republicans could not vote down the ACA. They tried, they couldn't do it. That is, in our very messy system, an expression of the will of the people, right? I mean, it's a little blurry, but that is about as good as it gets for us. And this is the court coming in. They did it with Medicaid by basically saying that the states can and they're doing it now with what the patient protection part of the ACA is, which is, we're not going to allow you to call it insurance unless it provides these essential care things. And now they're assaulting that. And so this is all, when they do this stuff, it is a proxy for a whole other set of things that actually impact people on a daily basis.
Right. And it's important to understand why it's necessary for Congress to delegate power in this way. So it's not just that like the HHS might get new data showing that colonoscopies are good. It's that, for example, perhaps a novel coronavirus might emerge that Congress couldn't possibly have known about in 2010 because it didn't exist when the ACA was passed. And, right now we're in a period where like the government is buying up a bunch of vaccines and everyone can get one for free. But that's probably not going to be like, once we've got this thing under control, that's probably not going to be the permanent state of how we control COVID-19. Like the permanent state is we're probably going to need annual or at least frequent booster shots. And at some point, it's not going to make sense for the government to go and buy up a bunch of shots and give them to everyone. It's going to make sense to integrate that into the normal health system. So you go to your doctor, your insurance company pays for the booster shot, and the doctor gives you the booster shot as you need them. And the law which allows HHS to say to insurance companies that they have to cover that COVID booster shot is this provision of the ACA that is now being challenged. So like, we're not just talking about, a situation where like, okay, now it's a little harder to legislate, but like Congress can just pass new laws. We're talking about whether or not we can have a government that's able to respond to new problems. Because again, it's ridiculous to think that in 2010, Congress should have known like, oh, there's going to be this pandemic in a decade. And so we need to pass a law that requires insurance companies to provide treatments for this disease that does not yet exist.
So can you just give us a sense of the scale of this? Because we're not just talking about the Supreme Court here, right? Like we're talking about, I'm trying to find the figure here, 234 federal judges appointed by Donald Trump, 3 on the Supreme Court, 54 on the Court of Appeals. So like a lot of focus, rightly, is on the Supreme Court and the effect that has, the chilling effect that has on public policy, obviously. But they have multiple fail safes. It's like if the Titanic was actually effective, how they had multiple layers to prevent against some sort of sinkage issue. So that's a terrible analogy, but that's how I visualized it in my mind for a second. Can you just talk about that? Because I think like they've really made sure that their agenda is going to be protected on multiple layers.
Yeah. So what we've already seen in the lower courts is a lot of what's called forum shopping, where like there's a Republican party or like there's a Republican litigant, often it's the Texas Attorney General, that wants to get a Democratic policy struck down. And so what they will do is like, just to talk about the geography of the courts for a second, the country is divided up into various districts. I think there's like 86 judicial districts. And then those districts are divided up into divisions. And in many of those divisions, there's only one judge. And so if you file your lawsuit in the right division, you can guarantee that you will get your lawsuit in front of this one judge. And so a very common practice by Republicans, if they want to strike down a law, is they will file in a division where there is one extremely conservative judge, and that judge will basically just rubber stamp whatever, the Republican policy is. We also see a lot of cases being brought in the Fifth Circuit, which is Mississippi, Texas, and Alabama was part of the Mississippi, Texas, and Louisiana is the Fifth Circuit. And the reason for that is because the Fifth Circuit is the Trumpiest court in the country right now. Trump put a lot of people on it, super conservative. And so what will happen is, for example, Biden tried to put in place a 100-day moratorium on deportations, so we can figure out what was going on with our immigration policy before he started deporting people. Almost immediately, a Trump-appointed judge struck that policy down. And, someone forum shopped to get in front of that Trump-appointed judge. The judge's reasoning was ridiculous, but the case would appeal to the Fifth Circuit, and then it would go to the Republican-controlled Supreme Court. So after this Trump judge struck down the moratorium, Biden just decided to drop it, because what was the point? It was only a 100-day moratorium. You'd go to the Fifth Circuit. They'd probably lose in the Fifth Circuit because it's such a Trumpy court. Maybe you could win in the Supreme Court, but by the time you got up to the Supreme Court, the case would probably be moot anyway, because the 100 days would be over. So you have two interlocking problems here. You have a Supreme Court that is extraordinarily conservative, and then you have all of these Trumpy judges on the lower courts who feel emboldened because they know that they're probably not going to be reversed, and even if they are reversed, who cares? They can issue an injunction and it might be in place for 2 years before a court gets around to removing it. And Democrats just don't have the same luxury to go after a Republican president. I mean, Democrats tried to forum shop in order to get their cases challenging Trump policies in front of friendly judges, and the Republican Supreme Court would just snap their fingers and dissolve those decisions.
Okay, so and we should say the moratorium didn't prevail. Last month was the lowest number of deportations that we've had in, I believe, in decades. It was under 3,000 for the first time in ages, but nevertheless. So let's get back. I want to get, we're basic. We skipped chapter 1, which is the voting things. And to be honest, I think we've had other opportunities to talk about the assault on the Voting Rights Act and what that opens up the opportunity for everything that we're seeing now. And we're already at chapter 2. So let's just, I want to touch, because these things are more obscure. And I think, one of the things I really appreciate about the writing that you do, Ian, is it helps communicate to people just how important this is. We haven't had any major legislation in 10 years. I don't know that we will have anything structural, under the Biden administration. Knock on wood, we hopefully can. But if we don't, if the Senate's gone in 2022, forget about it. It's not even going to be close. But these things are going to resonate. Let's go, when we talk about the administrative state, let's go to the Chevron doctrine too, which is the other sort of I guess, rubric, if you will, that is important in terms of the administrative side, the government being able to function in a way to help people. What is the Chevron doctrine, and where is the threat to it?
Sure. So the Chevron doctrine is a doctrine of deference. It means, it says that, so there are various laws, like I said, that give agencies the power to regulate. Sometimes those laws are ambiguous. Sometimes it's unclear exactly which power has been delegated to an agency. The Chevron doctrine says when it's unclear, the court should defer to the agency's interpretation of the statute. And it's part of a broader philosophy that really emerged, during the Roosevelt administration, that when things are unclear, we generally want the elected branches to make the decision. If you go back to, the early Roosevelt years and before Roosevelt, the Supreme Court would often make up doctrines looking at the vaguest parts of the Constitution, and then would use them to strike down minimum wage laws, to strike down child labor laws. And, what they would do is they would point to some ambiguous phrase of some extraordinarily ambiguous phrase of the Constitution, like the word liberty, and say we think that there is a liberty to enter into contracts where you're paid less than the minimum wage. And it was basically just the justice making things up. And so these deference doctrines emerged as a nod to democracy, as a way to say, look, there's all kinds of legal questions that don't have clear answers. And when the answer is uncertain, as a general rule, we want democracy to prevail. And this was the dominant way of thinking amongst not just Democrats, but amongst Republicans. I mean, Reagan talked about the need for judicial restraint. Nixon railed against judges who imposed their social views from the bench. So it used to be that there was a widespread agreement that we want the Democratic branches to be the ones that govern. What I think has happened is that, Republicans have lost the popular vote in 7 of the last 8 presidential races. They'd have I saw one study that showed that the only reason they wouldn't have controlled the Senate since the late 90s if senators were chosen in free and fair elections rather than through the malapportioned process that we have now. And so you have a political movement, you have a political party that depends on minority rule. It doesn't have any confidence in its ability to win free and fair elections. And I think, once you lick the lollipop of minority rule, you suck it forever. Once you accept the premise that it's okay for Donald Trump to become president with 3 million less votes than Hillary Clinton. Once you accept the premise that you can confirm 3 Supreme Court justices, even though you don't have a block of senators who represent a majority of the people, once you accept that, I just don't think it's very hard to make the leap to say, well, we've got these 6 oligarchs with lifetime appointments. Why don't we let them rule?
Right. And so, okay, in the Chevron doctrine, basically would have give us a sort of a real world example of something that might implicate our daily lives. Once they overturn the Chevron doctrine, or overturn maybe is too strong. Once they just basically mutate it, change it. Give us an example of how that might impact us.
So, I mean, the Chevron doctrine deals with ambiguous statutes that allow for regulation, but I actually think what the Supreme Court is doing is much bigger than going after Chevron. So, the big scary thing that I think they're doing in this space is something we referred to earlier called the non-delegation doctrine, which claims that it is unconstitutional for Congress to permit agencies to regulate in certain ways. And like the way that the court has described this, like the dominant approach within the court right now was articulated in an opinion by Neil Gorsuch. He said that the Constitution provides that I'm reading the wrong quote. He said that a federal law permitting agencies to regulate must be sufficiently definite and precise to enable Congress, the courts, and the public to ascertain whether Congress's guidance has been followed. Now, I don't know what that means. And I don't think that Gorsuch really knows what it means either. It's just this vague, made-up standard. And the thing about vague standards is that when the court announces a vague rule, it's giving power to itself. Like if there's a law saying the speed limit is 65, then you know how fast you have to drive. And if you get hauled into court and you're driving 64, you can say, look, I was driving less than the number. You can't do anything to me. But if the law says that everyone must drive at a reasonable speed, then who's going to decide what a reasonable speed is? The courts are going to decide what a reasonable speed is. And whether or not you get hit with a speeding ticket is going to be entirely up to the whim of some judge. And so that's what Gorsuch is doing here. That's what the Supreme Court is doing here. They're saying, yeah, like regulations can sometimes happen, but they have to fit within this vague standard and no one knows what it means. And we get to decide what it means. And so if we see a regulation we don't like, we can just get rid of it.
Yeah, just so much of the judicial philosophy seems to be working backwards from creating one's own power, right? And it creates like this or reaffirming one's own power. And I'm just curious if you think because justices are unelected that there isn't more public scrutiny on the fact that they're immense hypocrites in the way that they approach every case. And, of course, the right-wing ones are more hypocritical too, but it's not like the left-wing justices adhere to strict judicial philosophies as has been written about, for centuries at this point. I mean, is that part of the dynamic of why their, I guess, blatant politicization isn't called out more?
I mean, I think there's a lot of structural reasons why, like, it's been hard for people to notice how partisan the courts are. I mean, one is, there's just always going to be a temptation. I mean, if you give someone immense power and a lifetime appointment, like, I don't care who you are, you're always going to be tempted to abuse your power. Like that is just an inherently dangerous type of authority to give someone. But I think like another structural problem is that, like, there's a mythology around the courts where like judges will tell you that like, no, we're following these doctrines. We're not, and they can dress their opinions up in very complicated language that, I spent 3 years in law school to learn how to speak that language. And then most of the people who know how to speak that language have a vested interest in the system. Because, if you're most lawyers, most people who are experts on the courts are lawyers. And a lawyer's job is to get people to pay them a lot of money by like convincing the person that they want to pay them a lot of money that they speak the secret code that the judges are using in order to make these decisions happen. And if you're a lawyer, you don't want the message you don't want to get out there. And I'll be honest, most cases aren't political. So like most cases really are decided under legal principles, but under these incredibly politicized cases, voting rights, Obamacare, religion, all of these really politicized cases, it really just is politics all the way down. And most of the experts, most of the people who have the ability to speak the language and translate what they're doing are lawyers who have a vested interest in preserving the system because the system is where they make their money. I mean, I guess I speak the way that I do because I'm a lawyer who doesn't practice. And so like, I know the secret code without having any kind of like personal financial interest in maintaining the legitimacy of the system. But I mean, believe me, every time I tweet something critical of like the Supreme Court as an institution or suggesting that maybe these guys are engaged in rank partisanship, it is inevitable that someone who is a partner at a law firm, often people that I like personally, is going to come back at me and say, no, that's if I was making $600,000 a year, convincing my clients that like the courts are totally legitimate and operate under legal principles and that I have the power to translate those legal principles to get I would want to preserve that system too.
And I'll say, just from my own personal experience in having similar arguments with my father, that it's not even as in semi-retirement you're part of a clergy in their mind, and so it's basically saying like, this whole God concept I'm a little shaky on, and they don't want to hear that. But speaking, since we're using that metaphor, let's talk about briefly religion. There is a concerted attempt by the court, and it's been building for years, in terms of particularly under the auspices of the Religious Freedom Act, but just the broad concept of essentially saying, here's one more thing that you don't have to abide by in terms of our civil society because you are religious, essentially. How is that happening?
Yeah, I mean, like one thing about writing a book is that like the Supreme Court has moved so fast on religion that many of the worst case scenarios that I predicted in the book have now become real after the book was published. So, this starts with the Hobby Lobby decision, which was the first decision to say that if you have a religious objection to the law, not only can you gain an exemption to it, but you can gain an exemption to it even if that exemption hurts someone else. So there's a long line of cases saying that people with religious objections to the law can sometimes be exempted from it. And I think for the most part, those decisions are good. There are laws dealing with Saturday Sabbatarians, people who believe that Saturday is a sacred day that they shouldn't have to work, and they wanted a day off work. And you should get the day off work. There's a lot of cases involving Muslims and Sikh men who believe that they should grow a beard. And so basically these cases involve prisoners and cops. There are prisoners who are told that they have to shave so long as they're incarcerated. And there are cases involving cops that there's a dress code and it says they have to shave. And you have Muslim and Sikh men who say my religious belief says that I should grow a beard. And I think those people should be allowed to grow a beard. It doesn't hurt anyone. What is new is that the Supreme Court, and this started with the Hobby Lobby decision, has said that religious objections, or at least certain religious objections, can be used to diminish the rights of others. So Hobby Lobby involved a federal regulation that ensured that workers would get birth control coverage through their employer health plans. You had employers who didn't like birth control, and so their right to exercise their religion trumped the rights of the employees to get birth control. The newest rounds of cases we're seeing right now deal with two issues. One is discrimination. You have a lot of cases involving people who want to discriminate against LGBT people and who claim they have a religious right to do so. And then the really new and really scary line of cases deal with COVID-19 restrictions, where you have states that say you can't have a bunch of people gather together in one place and like infect each other. And these are generally universally applicable rules. You can't gather in a church, you can't gather in a movie theater, you can't gather in like a stadium. They're trying to prevent these kinds of gatherings. And churches and occasionally other houses of worship has sued, and the Supreme Court has been, after Justice Barrett was confirmed, became very, very permissive of these churches that are saying that they want to get exemptions from public health rules. And so in this case, you have a situation where people literally will die if COVID-19 is allowed to spread uncontrollably. You've got states trying to restrict its spread. And the Supreme Court is saying that the rights of religious objectors even trump public health laws whose purpose is to preserve human life. And that's very new. I mean, I don't want to be insensitive to people's religious beliefs. Like, there are lots of cases where people seek exemptions, and I think in most of those cases, people should get them. But when you're trying to take away the rights of another person, or when you're doing something that literally endangers the lives of others, the court has historically said, no, you don't get an exemption in those cases, and that has changed.
Well, what is the limiting principle on that? I mean, so far we've seen things like, okay, if I'm an employer, I don't have to pay for insurance, but I mean, how do you not, like, how does that not get into, like, I'm a taxpayer and I don't want to pay for, I just don't think that poor people should get health insurance, like, for free from the government. That's against my, religious sense of self,
being a jerk.
self-sufficiency. I mean, how do we not get to that point?
Yeah, I mean, I worry that there isn't a limiting principle. I mean, the Supreme Court has said that taxes, like, you can't claim a religious right not to pay taxes. And so, the court's moved significantly to the right since it said that. So we'll see if that principle stands. I mean, the other thing that I'm afraid of is that the limiting principle might be, which faith do you belong to? So, there are some cases, I don't want to suggest that, every Muslim who brings a case loses. I mean, there's the cases I talked about involving men who wanted to grow beards, and those plaintiffs typically prevail. But there was Trump's Muslim ban, not that long ago, and the Supreme Court upheld that. There was a decision that the Supreme Court backed away from after a huge backlash, including from prominent members of the religious right. But there was a decision a few years ago where a state said that if you are on death row and you're a Christian, you were allowed to have a Christian pastor present during your execution. But if you were Muslim, you were not allowed to have an imam, a member of the Muslim clergy, present. And that was just blatant religious discrimination. You're not allowed to say, if you're this faith, you get this, and if you're this faith, you get less. And the Supreme Court said that was fine. And they've since backed away. There was an enormous backlash, and they decided that was a hill that they don't want to die on. But the pattern I've seen from this court is that they have a tremendous amount of sympathy when it is a Christian plaintiff seeking some sort of religious accommodation, and very little sympathy to, members of other faiths. And that's especially troubling. If you're not willing to apply the rules universally to everyone, then we're not even talking about a constitutional regime. Then you're talking about something approaching Christian nationalism.
We're not going to have time for chapter 4, which is the right to sue, but I want to have you back on that. That is a big a bailiwick of mine. I go to this tort conference a couple of times a year, and the access to the courts, hugely important. But we are signing them away in arbitration clauses. We're signing them away in the silos of labor and consumer protections and worker protections and all sorts of things. But I want to be able to ask you this sort of general question. What do you think? How aggressive is John Roberts going to be in pushing these things? when you assess where they're at, 4 months, 5 months, I guess 6 months into a 6-3 dynamic, without a lot of, reason to believe that's going to change, right? I was going to ask you, do you think Breyer should retire yesterday or 6 months ago or somewhere in between? But I get the sense I know the answer. But how fast do you think Roberts is going to go? Just purely as a court observer and with a sense of like maybe a vague insight into what Roberts' agenda is. How fast are they going to go in imposing this type of, in many instances, radical agenda?
Yeah, I mean, part of the problem is that it's not up to Roberts anymore. I mean, it's Kavanaugh and Barrett are now emerging as the median justices on the court, and both of them are well to Roberts's right. So, everything depends right now on whether we can convince Brett Kavanaugh or Amy Coney Barrett to hold their fire. And I mean, the question of how fast they're going to go, I'm not sure. I was surprised that they seemed to be holding their fire on everything but religion after Biden took office. There's a big abortion case that they were asked to hear months ago, and they've just been sitting on it. They haven't turned it away, but they haven't agreed to hear it either. And that's surprised me. I mean, I was expecting, especially given Justice Barrett's passion for, abolishing Roe v. Wade, that that was something they would do right away. There was a guns case that they sat on for a little while, and then they just agreed to hear a big guns case. So they seem to be accelerating their pace somewhat. I think that there's going to be a lot of bad election law cases that come down because we're entering a redistricting cycle. And so there will inevitably be lawsuits about, some of the justices think that in states where you have a Republican legislature and a Democratic governor, the governor may not be allowed to veto a bill. And those lawsuits are going to be brought, the court's going to have to resolve them. There's a big Voting Rights Act case in front of the Supreme Court now. I was worried that they were going to get rid of the Voting Rights Act potentially in its entirety within that case. Based on the oral argument, I think they're likely to be more incremental. So the court isn't moving as fast as it could move, but it's not exactly holding its fire either. And there's just a lot of issues like all these redistricting cases where we have to have an election in 2022. People have to know what the maps are. And so they can't avoid those cases.
Right. Well, Ian Millhiser, senior correspondent at Vox, author of The Agenda, How a Republican Supreme Court is Reshaping America. Thank you so much for your time today. We will put a link to your book at majority.fm. Hope to talk to you again soon about the chapters we left on the table.
All right. Thanks so much, Sam.
Thank you.
All right, folks, quick break. We'll be right back. Finish this up. We are back. Just wrapping things up here.
We are back, but not for long.
Not for long. I can't recommend reading Ian Millhiser's book enough, or going back and just listening to some of the interviews that we've done. The things like the non-delegation clause and their doctrine and the Chevron doctrine, and these issues are going to be really prominent in your daily lives, and you will never hear about them really in any of your news outlets because it's just too boring for people. And that's why I like to talk about it so much. We'll be back tomorrow, Friday, and that's exciting.
Yeah.
Right. See you then. All right. We're still here. It is Thursday, folks. You know what that means. We're heading into the fun half. Just a little teaser for tomorrow. Tomorrow on the program, we are going to have I don't know, we're breaking format. Usually the second guest we have on a Friday. Yeah, I guess we're breaking format. The second guest on a Friday is usually like somebody who's, you know, funny or amusing or mildly amusing,
right,
and maybe talking about, TV or film or something like that. All of that type of stuff. And we just got this as the first IM. On Sunday, the trial of Stephen Donziger will start. Please look into it. His heroic story of legal activism is nothing short of unbelievable. The entire USA legal system, both public and private, are trying to crush him in retaliation when he successfully sued the oil mega corporation Chevron for nearly $10 billion on behalf of the people of Ecuador. And that is from the Robin Commons. Well, Robin Commons, it's your lucky day, because you were the first IMer of the day. And tomorrow on the program for the second guest, instead of someone tell about film, we're going to be talking to Stephen Donziger, who is that attorney. He is under house arrest. His trial is... I
didn't realize we finally got him.
We've
been trying to have him on for a little while, right?
Yeah. The trial starts in a couple of days. We're going to have him on before the trial starts. And so more than worthwhile to tune in for tomorrow. I mean, you should tune in every day.
Yeah, please.
But
that's going to be really great. And, we should just be telling people to watch our Peacock interviews more. Because there's so much good stuff there.
There's so much good stuff there. It is not, someone said the other day that it was behind a, what do you call it?
A paywall.
Yeah, paywall. It's not.
You have to sign up, but then, you can watch them for free.
You sign up for free.
But yeah.
You sign up for free. And then there's like a download function to it.
But if you have a Roku, get Peacock. You just got to create an account, and then you can watch all of our
Apple
stuff.
TV, or you can do it on your phone too.
Yeah,
you just get the Peacock app.
Yeah.
And then
you have the John Wick movies too. That's why I signed up.
Yeah, there you go. But it's free. It's free. You got to go through, watch ads, but it's free. And then, people download those things and then they post them on YouTube. And I don't know how we would stop them from doing it. I hope that doesn't happen. Anyways, folks, so tune in tomorrow. And just remember, your support makes this show possible. When you become a member of the Majority Report, you get the free show, you get free commercials, even though you can go back and look at the podcast description or the YouTube description and see, what are the ad deals that we have? Because, 10% off this, 10% off that, 20% off this, 20% off that type of thing. And it's your support that makes the show possible. A lot of people, frankly, still, we have, over 400,000 people getting on unemployment this week. Still some people hurting. If you are one of those people who are not hurting and you enjoy this show, your support is more than welcome and helpful. Join themajorityreport.com. Check it out. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code MAJORITY. Also, majoritydiscord.com. You can go and see what old Matt's dad is saying or what even old Matt is saying. And check it out, majoritydiscord.com. And, of course, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code MAJORITY. Get 10% off. Joining, are we going to have, is Brandon on today?
No.
No, he can't do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's out sick.
Okay. So on the fun half today, it's going to be the Matts and the Emmas and the Brendans holding down the fort. Old Matt, what's happening on Doomed?
I think the signups to the Discord just went through the roof.
There's
people clamoring.
I bet. I don't have any doubt about that. Poggers. It's gone poggers. Oh, but
yeah.
Okay, I don't. Honestly, I don't even know what that one means. But anyway, yeah. Oh, Mr. Zoomer over here, Sam Seder.
Right though, that's the one thing I know.
Anyway,
They don't care.
tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern time at youtube.com/MattBinder, we'll be having a show on another Facebook episode, unplanned, but who knew Facebook was going to have their oversight board was going to decide to rule on their big Trump decision. So tonight we'll be talking about that and how it is actually what the oversight board ruled is actually the worst case scenario for Mark Zuckerberg and completely blows up the whole reason he set up the oversight board in the first place.
Oh,
so, I know the answer to that. He's pissed off everybody.
Yeah. So youtube.com/MattBinder, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Subscribe now and catch it tonight, or doomedcast.com for the podcast version of the show, which goes up shortly after.
And new Matt, what is happening on the Matt Leckian universe of media?
Yeah, Luke Savage, staff writer at Jacobin, is going to be joining David Griscom and I tonight, 8 Eastern at Left Reckoning's YouTube channel to talk about an easy target, Bill Gates, and a harder target nowadays, Big Pharma. So we're going to be talking about that with Luke tonight. And we'll also be talking about big city liberals, moderate liberals, and why they're averse to taxation and want to recall Chesa Boudin and do all sorts of horrible stuff. The enemy is closer now. For instance, like the stab in the back in Austin of the homeless population. So we're going to get into that politics a little bit too tonight. So patreon.com/Left Reckoning. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel, folks, now.
All right, folks. You will see these guys in the fun half. I will be back tomorrow. Until then, adieu. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Ooh.
Rand Paul. I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook.
Throw our hands up.
Ooh. Wow.
but Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up.
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
Hello, everybody. Matt, Emma, Brendan. How are you doing on this fine Thursday afternoon?
I'm doing not terribly, a little bit feverish from the shot day 2, but better than I was yesterday.
Oh, you got your shot on what, Tuesday?
Yeah. And
which one, the first or the second?
Second.
All right, so I just got my shot, the first one, on Saturday. So I'm well behind you guys. I got another
First one's easy.
Which one?
First one, I got Moderna.
Oh, so you
Nice.
got your lag time in between.
Yeah, I gotta wait pretty much a month. I go at the end of this month again.
How did
you know?
at least get some layer of protection? It's kind of a crazy feeling, right?
Right. I mean, I got first of all, I didn't even realize that I got the shot because my the nurse where I went pulled a fast one on me and said she was gonna count to 3, and on 3 she was gonna give me the shot, and she went 1, and then proceeded to give me the shot immediately.
Yeah, that's a good trick they do though.
That's punk rock, Matt. Aren't you a
Right.
punk rocker?
I mean, I actually liked that because I wasn't looking, because I actually brought my 2 kids with me because I was watching them at the time. And because my partner was actually getting her second shot while I was watching the kids. And so I was preoccupied with them, and they were watching me in fear. My almost 6-year-old was looking at me like I was about to go through some sort of major surgery. He was truly worried about me. And I didn't even know she gave it to me because it was that quick. And, the next day my arm was like sort of dead. It's sort of like, not the whole thing, but, you got like a little bit of a pain in that arm that they actually get you with. And it's still a little bit like sore, especially where the shot went in. But other than that, I'm fine, nothing. But I know the second one's a lot worse comparatively.
No, it really doesn't feel like much when I didn't even notice when the needle went in either. I mean, that's what's crazy. It's such a thin needle. It really doesn't feel like anything. It's barely a pinch.
And they squirt it in you fast too. It's almost faster than you'd think they would. It's just like, and it's out.
Right. I thought it was going to be like when you get like blood taken and you're sitting there for a minute and, they put it in and you're there for a second. No, it was like literally 1, like the nurse did to me, like not even 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I'd do it again. I want a 3rd shot.
Well,
one.
you could get it, and who knows? Maybe you could be a test subject for Moderna or Pfizer. Well, which one did you get?
I got Pfizer. Yeah, no, I want a 3rd one just because I've heard that I can read thoughts and or transmit wave for 5G, but we'll see.
I sort of want the AstraZeneca one. I want to know why the U.S. has not approved that one. It's enticing to me. I want that one because I can't have it.
Isn't it very simple, J&J?
I want the clots.
I have no idea.
I'm joking.
You want the clots. Right.
I want
right.
V.
Which one? What?
That's the Russian one.
Oh, yeah. It's Sputnik, right? Isn't that what they call it?
Sputnik V or
right.
V is
5.
But they just Russia I was reading today, they just approved a new version of Sputnik called like Sputnik Light or something, which is a 1-shot dose, which is like 79% effective.
Ooh, very nice.
Anyway, this IM came in right away, and I saw a clip of this yesterday when it was happening. So I need to talk about it with you right now, Emma. Now you're going to be shocked because it's sports related, but this was exciting even for me. Preg host Slimer, or pre-ghost Slimer. That makes more sense. Emma, any thoughts on the wild Capitals Rangers game last night?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. I mean, if you guys follow me on Twitter, I will keep this brief for everybody. I'm a diehard New York Rangers fan. The Giants and the Rangers have my heart. I'm also a big Knicks fan, but I was proud of the Rangers for retaliating because the league did not suspend Tom Wilson, who, if people haven't seen the clip, he's like a notoriously horrible, dirty player, a legitimate psychopath who took the one of the Rangers players who was face down against the ice put his stick under and was pulling up and punching him in the back of the head like this. Other Rangers players tried to pull him off. He ripped off the Rangers' best player, Artemi Panarin's helmet, and then pulled him down like that by his hair onto the ice, and his head nearly slammed. He could have, potentially died. The NHL player safety fined him $5,000 and didn't suspend him one game. And he is a repeat offender. I mean, over and over. And so the Rangers took the situation to their own hands last night and fought a bunch. And so, but hockey is doing itself a massive disservice. They're about to get this deal done with ESPN. And this is how they want to portray themselves to a national audience. It's incredibly short-sighted, gross, myopic, and there needs to be some consequences for Tom Wilson. But, I
remember some guy, maybe 10 or so years ago, paralyzing somebody on the ice. I seen it all over Sports Center for a few days, and I'm like, I don't want to watch this at all. I'm not like an MMA guy. I think all that stuff's gross. And I saw the Tom Wilson thing with the stick under the guy's neck, and he should be arrested for it. It shouldn't even be in the NHL's purview. This is a legal matter. He's
Well, Brendan, you're a Devils fan, right? You've had to deal with Tom Wilson in the division similarly. He's like, there's something wrong with him in his brain.
Yeah, I don't have any sort of psychological insight into Tom Wilson. However, he is a serial offender of the league's player policy and should have absolutely been suspended. And the league could have mitigated against, what happened last night by doing so.
Don't you think, though, that I don't want to say that this is happening, but being that it is, using it to their advantage. I don't usually watch hockey. I used to be a big hockey fan back when the Rangers were the legendary 94 team. But then I sort of fell out of the NHL. And
but that's the problem, Matt. They are fine with this being the national headline. It should not be. I mean, hockey is not MMA. I don't want it. And maybe, 10 years ago you would have asked me about the fighting, and maybe I would have said yeah, it's part of the sport. But there's a line to this, and there's a code to this, and none of what happened last night in that slop fest would have happened if the NHL actually acted. It's like an boys club problem, like the MLB.
Are there actually rules as to a not sanctioned but okay way to fight in the NHL? Is there actually
rules? But you're not. Tom Wilson's around 80 pounds heavier than Artemi Panarin, for example. There are unwritten rules between players, and I know this is stupid and old school. We can move past this now. I bet it was honestly incredibly disturbing what happened, and the Rangers are in shambles right now. But
I just want to say, Matt brought up the MMA brought up how he's not a fan of MMA before, but I want to point out just how ridiculous what Tom Wilson did, especially with that punch to the back of that player's head. In even the MMA, UFC, and other MMA organizations,
it's consensual.
But you can't. Punching in the back of the head is illegal. You can't punch someone in the back of the head.
Right.
The ref will stop the fight.
But even that,
stop doing that.
Yeah, I wanted to say, even MMA, that is guys accepting that they are getting into a extremely violent fight situation. This NHL thing where we accept just assaults to happen it's basically the defense is similar to we should allow people to duel in the streets when they insult each other. It's the exact same retrograde masculine bullshit.
Right.
Yeah. And if there's a fight, often though, the guys will drop the gloves and they know what's happening. Booch's face was on the ice, back of the head like that. Ow! I just kind of hurt myself. But
Emma, you just got a $5,000 fine from the NHL.
So the New York Rangers put out a statement saying that this was unacceptable and he should have been suspended. He's a repeat offender. Guess what just happened? Rangers, for speaking out against the NHL, $250K fine.
As a Devils fan, I think the Rangers should resign the league and protest.
Wait, they seriously got a $250,000 fine for speaking out against the league?
It's broken. I mean, the head of NHL player safety is a former goon / enforcer. So, I mean, this is the way he sees these things. It's sick, and it's not going to help the NHL break into the national consciousness. So let's move on, because I'm sure people are sick.
I find it fascinating, but I agree. We can move on. What would you like to talk about first? I mean, you got a clip in mind?
Sure. I mean, I guess this is not necessarily the sexiest clip, but I want to bring up this Israel-Palestine situation, if you guys have that teed up. This came out over the weekend, essentially. So there's a neighborhood in East Jerusalem. I can't pronounce it really. It's called Sheikh Jarrah, and it's where many Palestinians live. And as a part of the just general brutality of the Israeli government, they are trying to evict these Palestinians from their homes as the Israeli government continues to settle and creep into Palestinian territory. And so this clip kind of went viral. Many Palestinians have lived in this neighborhood for decades after they were exiled from other territories that used to be their homes. And these homes have been passed from generation to generation, but courts in Israel have decided, no, technically this is ours. And they're basically kicking Palestinian families out of their homes. And this exchange between an Israeli man and a Palestinian woman who used to live in her home, the man took her home, went viral. And I think it just needs to be shared. So let's take a watch and listen.
Jacob, you know this is not your house.
Yes, but if I go, you don't go back. So what's the problem? What are you yelling at me? I didn't do this. I didn't do this.
But
it's easy to yell at me, but I didn't do this.
You are stealing my house.
And if I don't steal it, someone else is going to steal it.
No one is allowed to steal it, يا عمي.
זה לא שלי להחזיר.
בוא נגיד שיש
So that's him saying, if I don't steal your house, someone else is going to steal it. And that's technically true, because the Israeli government has decided that, no, you've got to move, you've got to uproot yourself. Palestinian families, you've lived in this area for a long time, but as a part of our expansion project, our cultural genocide project, you're out. And so this man, the exchange that I've seen a lot of people commenting on, the blame is focused on this one particular man. And while I do think he's a dick, that's not necessarily where the blame should be shouldered. It's on the Israeli government that continues to, without fail, basically harm Palestinian community.
Because he's right. It would be another Israeli settler in that house if it wasn't. And I mean, I think I was just reading about the Homestead Act. And the Homestead Act, you could go get some land in the Dakotas if you wanted to. It didn't matter if you were a man or a woman, or even if you were a freed former slave, you could go get some land. The only thing you couldn't be was Native American. And that's because there was an imperial settler project that wanted to displace people. And that's exactly what's going on in Israel and Palestine right now.
Right. So
I appreciate him actually saying that if I don't steal it, like he didn't try to even sugarcoat it, like, according to the law, this isn't yours, it's mine. He didn't even try that. He just said, I'm stealing it. That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate him at least being honest with what he's doing. Not that it matters, honestly.
Yeah. It's just, I was disturbed by his I guess flippancy, I guess, but I want the focus to be more on how the Israeli government has been in this incredible rightward, not just shift, but just takeover for decades at this point. And there has been very little leftist opportunity to push back. And so these things become commonplace. But when you see a woman who's crying out and saying, this is my family home and you're taking it from me, yeah, he's not doing it. It's the governmental structure that's allowing someone like that to behave with such selfishness. And that's what where the blame should be focused, in my view.
I mean, so long as it's exclusive of Arabs, it's an entire society built on theft.
Yes, exactly. And so the Jerusalem District Court basically ruled last week that at least 6 families must vacate their homes on Sunday. They've lived there for multiple decades in a row. And there are going to be more families that are going to be evicted just because the Israeli courts and government say so by August 1st. And this is not, of course, an isolated case. This is going to happen throughout many communities in East Jerusalem and elsewhere as the Israeli government continues its illegal settlements that are illegal under international law and have been stated as such multiple times.
Right. Yeah, it's really depressing to see this go on. I mean, I don't know what needs to be done. What the line that needs to be crossed for, honestly, the United States to make a stand. I mean, I could say the international community, but I mean, the U.S. really could put their foot down and say something, and that would be the end of it. Because without us, what's Israel going to do? I just don't get it too, because it'd be the easiest thing in the world now, especially after Trump and how, and I know his reign is currently up in the air with Bibi Netanyahu. But I mean, it's the easiest thing in the world to tie him directly to Trump and get all those resistance libs who don't care about any politics but anti-Trump politics to get behind doing something about this. And it's, I just don't understand. Like, the guy is literally the Donald Trump, the government is literally the Donald Trump of administration of Israel times 10 in terms of how bad they are. Like, I mean, just do something about it and put your foot down and take a stand and get Israel to basically back off. Like, it baffles me.
Well, I mean, the Biden foreign policy has just thus far been, let us not really amend, except for their attempting to get Iran back to the table, but let's not amend any of the harms done by the Trump administration, and let's just give deference to the foreign policy blob that does harm on a regular basis. So it's just foreign policy consensus. Let's revert to that. Let's return to that, and not have any imagination and allow the machine to keep churning on. And so that's what we've seen personified by Blinken and Biden.
All right. You want to go to the phones?
Sure. I did a little depressing, but
yeah, we'll take a break from clips for a second, and let's go to.
We'll have that CIA clip a little bit later.
Oh yeah, we got to do that. That should lift our spirits, right? 847. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, is this me?
This is you. What's your name? Where are you calling from? And what would you like to talk about today?
Awesome. My name is Andrew. I'm from the Chicago area, and as we speak, I'm actually driving back home from my college graduation.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. As a side note, actually, my degree was in philosophy with a specialization in jurisprudence, and everything your guest today had to say about how cynically a lot of legal experts, to speak broadly, use like legal philosophy just to serve their own class interests is honestly pretty shocking. But what I really wanted to call in to talk about is that I had spent my last 2 semesters subleasing a room from one of my best friends, who's like a local guy, and his family is evangelical, and I wanted to speak towards some of the stuff your guest the other day had to say about that. Something that I've been really struck by talking to his parents, his dad is a Baptist preacher, is specifically a primitive Baptist preacher, which is like a hardline Calvinist denomination. And he's a like true believer, dyed-in-the-wool Republican country boy. Fantastically kind on a personal level, but something that I think really speaks towards why evangelicals have been so willing to back Donald Trump is that a lot of what I've picked up on from living with this family is that they view sort of this decline in rural America over the past couple decades as almost like a divine punishment from God for what they perceive to be like the moral decline of America, and things like, you know, the advancement of gay and trans rights, you know, increasing divorce rates, decreasing church attendance. And I think a lot of that is why a lot of these sort of evangelical people are so willing to back these sort of neo-fascist politicians, you know?
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of also overlap between evangelicals and belief in conspiracy theories and QAnon, cult-like groups, just looking to put a religious spin basically on everything to explain it to themselves. I mean, I'm no expert in the decline of rural America, but I mean, again, some of the most obvious reasons are right in front of you. You don't need a religious divine intervention to see that, you know, big corporations took over like the farming industry with Monsanto and, you know, and
consolidation of rail industry, that just like there used to be rail lines to all sorts of different small communities. Now it's mainly through the big city hubs.
Right. The you know, complete just ignoring infrastructure in this country that makes it possible for rural America to be connected to the rest of the country. And also, you know, you could also blame like the rise of the technology companies, and they basically have ignored a lot of rural America. And thankfully, the government has stepped in and basically said, you know, we're going to try to. And there's been programs like this for years now, but you know that they want to connect rural America to higher speed broadband, because obviously there's no money in that for the big tech companies, so they don't put any money into it. I mean, so many of the reasons why rural America is where it is because of some of the very people that rural America votes for. You know, I mean.
Rural America, like the interest America has in rural America is to take like, you know, commodities from it, not necessarily to like have people lead a productive life out there, unfortunately. And yeah, I don't know. That's really the disconnect because it's, yeah, like we also like hospital consolidation is another massive thing. People having to go way farther for hospital care. Yeah, it's, and like even going back to the Homestead Act, most people like it wasn't actually good business for people to homestead. You couldn't grow crops enough to make it even the free land profitable, so it ended up getting sold back to the railroad or whoever years later. Like way over 50% of homestead lands were sold back to giant corporations. So like it's kind of timeless. This is we need to affirmatively make people's lives better by doing things like Medicare for all and those things, because you can't expect like capitalism particularly to deliver people in rural America.
Right.
If I could chime in real quick, I think the closest thing that a lot of people with this sort of mindset have to approaching sort of like a sort of systemic analysis of why their communities are experiencing the hardships that they are is rather than like perceiving things as a product of economic forces and government policies that sort of affect things systemically. It's more they perceive you know, the nation as a collection of individuals, all of whom have their own relationships with God, and that the closest thing that there is to a systemic analysis is that certain legislative things, certain cultural things will promote or hinder sort of like public morality in some way.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I just think you have to show them that that's not the case. And if they, and ultimately sometimes people are so embedded in their social community that they're not going to be able to see around that, particularly religion, which is, I mean, I'm an old atheist. I feel like it's a bit of it's sort of formalized psychological operations is mainly what religion is. But
thanks for the call.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for taking my call.
Take care. All right, let's do this clip because I think we will have a broader discussion. But I mean, this particular clip is just so upfront and in your face, like they don't even hide why they're doing this. So, Montana governor Greg Gianforte, is cutting the federal COVID unemployment benefits to his own constituents. They're available to them. There's nothing on the federal side of things that are stopping the people of Montana from collecting these unemployment benefits, but Gianforte's decided to cut them. Now, you might know Gianforte, if you're not familiar with his work as governor, as the one of his greatest hits is literally a hit when he body slammed a reporter during his campaign. A pro-Trump guy attacked a reporter during his campaign. But anyway, here is his reasoning for cutting the federal unemployment benefits to his own constituents.
As we've opened up, employers can't find workers. It's across all industries. Restaurants are having to shut down for days because they can't find cooks or wait staff. So we made the decision yesterday, these supplemental unemployment benefits, honestly, we got what we incented. We were incenting people not to work. So we made the decision to opt out of the federal supplemental unemployment benefits and replace it with a back to work bonus. This is going to help employers, and honestly, there's dignity in work, and there's also satisfaction in being self-sufficient.
Look at how he words everything. I mean, he's, first of all, in case you didn't catch it, he's cutting the federal unemployment benefits. I need to make that clear, because employers in his state are having a hard time finding people to work. Again, everything he talked about during this whole segment, explaining why he did what he did, a move that will take money out of unemployed workers' hands. Everything he did was for employers. He says employers over and over and over again. It's like that, just to show how this is a true bipartisan belief for some people in our in Congress or at the state level. You might recall a clip we played last week where Kristen Sinema of Arizona was talking about how when she was looking at how employers in her state are affected whenever she makes a decision, and this was talking about the pro-union law that's coming up through Congress. I mean, it's just so so in your face, this clip, though. It's employers. And I hope the people of Montana are doing the math on how that one-time back-to-work bonus adds up in terms of what they get out of it compared to their
$300 a week for the pandemic. I mean, he says that, there are plenty of basically opportunities, right? But that's that has not been proven out by math. A $1,200 payment, a singular $1,200 payment that apparently will only go to the first 12,500 workers to claim it. So, I mean, that basically there's going to be some rush for it to incentivize people to go back to work. That's 300 times 4. So that's essentially, we're cutting off all unemployment benefits for a month. After a month. That's it. And the government is providing this money for you. And yet he still won't accept it. They're just going to do one stipend. That's the equivalent of 1 month of unemployment. And that's about it. Based on anecdotal, likely false, I'm not exactly sure about Montana's.
They're all lying. They should all be raising wages until people go back to work. That's what you do as a business. If people don't want to come work to you, you should pay them more money to do so.
Right. These are the free market types, the small business owners out there, and that's usually what they say they're doing it for.
But deprivation, the key point is deprivation is good for any capitalist bottom line. If people are forced to leave their home because they got to go pay the bills, and take less money than they otherwise would to do that, to leave their family, like JD Vance is talking about. Every business owner loves that, because that's a coercion baked into the system that we all just accept, that you have to go serve a capitalist if you want to survive in this country. And that I think it's fascinating that we've come so close to it in this pandemic just by giving people a little bit of extra unemployment insurance and some one-time check or a couple-time checks. That like when this is why it's sick when this country boasts about our unemployment rate. It's because it's really we're just keeping people so close to like scraping the bottom that they have to go sell their labor. Again, survey capitalists. I don't say sell their labor. It's not a free exchange, as we know, because if they weren't deprived, they would be asking for more money to go listen to that bullshit boss.
I do love the implication that a restaurant is entitled to exist, like ad infinitum, forever.
Right. But I mean, that's sort of what they're worried about, right? Like the short-term worry is that, oh, these small business owners are getting upset at me or getting upset at us, and they could go out of business, and that'll affect the numbers on what the economy in my state look like, and then I'll look bad. That's the short-term worry. But the long-term worry is people have gotten a taste of what it could be like. And God forbid, people start to really understand. I mean, hopefully, at least a few people have gotten the picture on how it could and honestly should be, where, people's basic needs are taken care of and they're not forced to work for poverty wages just to get by. And they could actually, take care of themselves and take a job that they want to take or that pays them the right wage.
Or has hours that is acceptable to what they want their lifestyle to be.
Right, right. I also think we might actually see some long-term effects from even what we've gotten, even if it all goes back tomorrow, which I'm sure Gianforte would love. I mean, I think there is a not insignificant number of people who during this past year plus realized what it could be like. And while they were home getting unemployment, they were, bettering their education or career prospects so they don't have to go back to these institutions. And I mean, the restaurant industry, I think, is in for a real awakening. The service industry as a whole, but especially the restaurant industry, they're in for a real awakening when things get back to quote unquote normal, or as close to normal as it does. I think they're gonna see a problem that doesn't go away with the pandemic and the COVID regulations that were brought out over this past year plus. I think they're going to see a lot less applicants for some of these jobs well after the pandemic is over.
And just, a little bit of a fact check. For a full-time workers earning minimum wage in Montana earn around $346 a week, which is way less than analysts have shown an average person in Montana needs to survive, which we already know. But Gianforte and all the Republicans like to pretend like the handout, as they call it, is so much more beneficial than actually going to work. No, you'd make a little bit more money going to your job, but you know how to incentivize people to work, as we've been saying? It's to maybe not pay them such a starvation wage that's just, so undignified.
Well, this is why it's funny when Destiny asked Richard Wolff how much violence he's willing to see happen to achieve socialism. Capitalism rests on this kind of violence. Like this is where profit comes from. People deprived enough to ask for less, accept less to leave their home.
Yeah.
Right. I remember, you just made me think of, I always think of this one. The Walter Block debate Sam had all those years ago when I believe it was about minimum wage they were discussing. I can't recall exactly what it was, but Walter Block's point was essentially, isn't $3 better than $0? And it's like, listen, if you're going to be, if $3 an hour isn't enough to keep you in your, in your apartment, and you get evicted anyway, and they take that $3 plus away from you, and you don't even get an apartment out of it, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah, how about this, Walter Block? $3 or $0, I'm still robbing you later that night.
Right. And also, I don't want to let this slide. The line that he dropped, I hate it. Honestly sounds so, I don't know, dystopian. There's dignity in work. Like that's something that gets like, you feel like the face on the screen in the sci-fi dystopian movie says over and over again in the background, right? But I mean, if there's dignity in work, then tell those owners, those small business owners, to roll them sleeves up and hit the kitchen and start working. There's dignity in it, right?
Or to compensate people as if they're dignified. I think what Gianforte is saying is it's cool that we can coerce people to work into fast food jobs for shitty bosses that they don't like and just spend 8 hours of their Saturday night and then because I've done this and come home smelling like fry grease because you need to pay for college or you need to pay for your rent or some shit. This is when the wage system is not a good system, I think, fundamentally. And we need to remove as much as possible because this is what we've been trapped in when we accept that we need to pay for our healthcare or our rent or whatever by what our boss gives us for us devoting our lives to them. We should just have this stuff taken care of. And, then we can go to serve whatever bosses we actually want to work for. Without feeling that itch of our bank accounts saying, just take it, work for this asshole, listen to whatever he says and wants you to do because that's freedom.
Right. This guy, my God, great points though, Matt.
Yeah.
Let's do James O'Keefe.
Okay, cool. I can tee that up.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So James O'Keefe, known smear artist, clown, disproven over and over again by just facts, has decided to have a little bit of fun, at the expense of everybody else's eyeballs and ears and general well-being. Here's his music video about oligarchy, and I don't really know what else.
No one ever says those things out loud, but it's obvious. Here's some. Leads, it leads. If it leads, it leads. I think that's propaganda.
Twitter permanently suspended his account after he exposed hypocrisy and fraud at CNN.
Project Veritas, a very controversial conservative group,
promoting misinformation.
The Times reported
that the footage of Project Veritas I do like that James O'Keefe is going after Twitter because there's a certain set of free speech crowd that seems to think Twitter is really good. Or Jack Dorsey's at least got his head on straight, which is funny to me. But anyway, continue, Brendan.
Stanford researchers.
A coordinated disinformation.
Sued the New York Times for defamation. Project Veritas just won a major victory in that case.
Come to you and offer you $100 million. You're not going to settle?
I would tell them to go to hell.
I just can't believe that my face is on TV. Oligarchy. Am I left or right?
Right.
Okay. One, this is just an excuse for him to wear a tight shirt and dance, right? He's like, I've been working out, making gains in the pandemic. How am I gonna put all of these buzzwords into one thing? And I appreciate the attempt at the 80s aesthetic, but it's just so horrible that it's him that I can't even get past it. What does oligarchy have to do with this? Does he understand what that word means?
I'm actually just a little bit shocked that I know this is true about pretty much 99.9% of conservative pundits and personalities, but I didn't know about James O'Keefe. Clearly also wanted to be in the entertainment industry and clearly didn't have it. And that's how we got James O'Keefe of Project Veritas.
Keep going. I guess we'll comment on it later. And just a reminder, and then we'll remind everybody about all the times he's been proven to be a bad faith artist who has been factually proven incorrect time and time again. Keep going.
James O'Keefe is suing Twitter for defamation.
Project Veritas taken down because they confronted a Facebook executive.
Take a video like that down, that would be due to a doxing concern.
I can show you a video of CNN doing the exact same thing.
Twitter made factual statements about our client that are false.
Oligarchy, Twitter, CNN, Zuck is working with Dorsey. Oligarchy, is it make-believe? Was that what you wanted them to see? Oligarchy, do you bring lies?
James O'Keefe, who I think is a despicable person.
The judge said, and your reporters interject their opinion, it stands to reason you should inform your readers.
They injected their opinions in news articles.
The New York Times is tripping over themselves. Now he's going to be suing Twitter. He's not backing down.
Another defamation lawsuit, this time against fake news CNN.
Do I have faith in truth?
But all of this fits the Project Veritas MO.
Promoting misinformation. The Project Veritas, a conservative activist organization.
Polling does not decide the truth. Go speak to evidence.
I mean, imagine like if we just got big stacks, just checks from asshole, rich left-wingers, if that existed like it did on the right. I would be doing shit like this too, honestly.
But isn't he trying to fundraise for that legal fund that he's essentially launching? Maybe, my dude, you could have just not done this music video and put the money into that.
Well,
this is a fundraising thing?
According to Jack Posobiec.
Oh, or is it a publicity thing pretending to be a fundraising?
Yeah, it says it's a music video for everyone who's been defamed. Veritas launches PV Legal will represent others who've been lied and can't defend themselves. Okay, I guess maybe not.
It's a commercial, yeah.
You know, I guess I was noticing that he somehow found the whitest dance crew I've ever seen for this music video. I mean,
he got the people that were dancing in front of the ship out in was it New Zealand or Australia?
Right. I remember that. It was like what the whitest twerk club I've ever seen too. Yeah, that's who he got. Jeez, this guy. I mean, should we start hitting up some of his greatest, and by greatest I mean worst hits? I mean,
of course, to be honest, like O'Keefe can do these sort of celebratory things because of the weak way I would say the Democratic Party responded to his Acorn stuff way back in the day.
Right.
And he actually I mean, just embarrassing. Like a organization that does a whole lot of good, and James O'Keefe did a whole lot of good.
You have to use in the past tense, unfortunately.
Right. And James O'Keefe does some dumbass publicity stunt in a Halloween pimp outfit, and just cowardice by the Democrats. And I mean, honestly, like that set the tone for a lot of. Like, I think we're hopefully a little bit better about that now, but I don't know. I guess I don't really even know. Like, O'Keefe won.
Here's the thing about that too, right? O'Keefe won in terms of how the general public understands that story. And obviously, because Acorn is no longer an organization, obviously, yes, he won in that aspect. But in the broad picture, actually, when it comes to that very specific case, he legally ended up losing because a lot of people don't know this part of the story. He had to pay that Acorn employee who was in the video a significant amount of money for completely editing what actually happened, to the point where what he put out there wasn't true, obviously, because we all know that, I hope. Yes. And he had to pay that person a significant amount of money. Well, like he lost that case at a legal perspective.
Yeah, this is a part of his MO though. So recently he was a part of this Minnesota ballot harvesting alleged scheme where he basically said that Ilhan Omar and people close to her were paying people for fake ballots, and then the guy who was the star witness in his expose came out, or somebody who he approached and said he was offered tens of thousands of dollars in order to say this. I mean, this is how they operate. He was also a part of the Planned Parenthood, what was it? Baby parts, selling baby parts, falsehood. So, I mean, his handprints are all over right-wing disinformation. He's very hit or miss, but the Acorn thing was a notable success, unfortunately.
Yeah. There's also my favorite, when to show how weak our border security was, he dressed up like Osama bin Laden, who I should note at the time, it's already ridiculous, but I should note at the time, had died, was killed already. So he dressed up like Osama bin Laden and tried to, or did, cross a tiny little like moat or pond or whatever it was that was on the border, and used an example of a border security guy standing around like a mile away, just watching it go down as like proof they weren't going to do anything to stop terrorists from crossing our border. I mean, they probably saw James O'Keefe don the Osama bin Laden mask, first of all, and realized that this is some dumbass white American guy being an idiot. I mean,
Yeah. So, okay, here. God, I can't decide between this Caitlyn Jenner clip and this CIA ad. Does anyone have any preference?
Who says we have to decide?
I don't know, because we got to go at 2:30. All right.
I think we could hit up both and then take a call or two, and then that's it.
All right. Bing, bang, boom. Okay. This woke CIA ad. The right wing is losing their minds over it, but not in the correct way, of course. The CIA put out this embarrassing public service announcement, essentially, claiming that it's intersectional and that it supports everybody. And everybody is welcome here. And Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, they've jumped upon it, basically saying that left-wing ideology has infected these intelligence agencies that are as far from left-wing as humanly possible, that are basically unaccountable to everybody and operate in the shadows and topple governments, left-wing governments, and are violent and whatever the case may be.
The left has historically loved the intelligence community. Historically, we all know. Yeah.
Especially
the communists, they love them.
Yeah. Yeah. As the intelligence community was assassinating civil rights leaders, at least they did it in a woke way. But the reality is that this is a way to co-opt and corporatize this kind of rhetoric to make intelligence community malfeasance seem less despicable.
Can I also just say, like, not at all new? Like, anybody from this is why people talk about STEM. The humanities folks. If people are familiar with Graham Greene's The Quiet American, the CIA agent in there wants a third way between colonialism and communism, right? Like this sort of, they never, especially like agents, they don't consciously often know that they or at least when they're in the recruitment stage, know that they're just going to be serving the interests of businesses. They think they're going to be patriots, and they're dumb, right? Like, I think, and once you get into like Edward Snowden, you find out what you're actually doing, it becomes a little bit more of a problem. But I do think, like, people, I saw some people saying nobody's going to be persuaded by this, and I think that's wrong. I think, like, high school or college kids in college that are idealistic can totally get swept up by this individualistic thing. It's just nothing new, and it says nothing about like the underlying ideologies, in my opinion. Although I do think there can be a little bit of hyper individualism in some of this stuff. But anyway, we can play that.
I agree. It could sway people. Let's take a watch, listen, whatever it's called.
When I was 17, I quoted Zora Neale Hurston's How It Feels to Be Colored Me in my college application essay. The line that spoke to me stated simply, I am not tragically colored. There is no sorrow dammed up in my soul nor lurking behind my eyes. I do not mind at all. At 17, I had no idea what life would bring, but Zora's sentiment articulated so beautifully how I felt as a daughter of immigrants then and now. Nothing about me was or is tragic. I am perfectly made. I can wax eloquent on complex legal issues in English while also belting Guayaquil de mis amores in Spanish. I can change a diaper with one hand and console a crying toddler with the other. I am a woman of color. I am a mom. I am a cisgender millennial who's been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. I am intersectional, but my existence is not a box-checking exercise. I am a walking declaration. A woman whose inflection does not rise at the end of her sentences, suggesting that a question has been asked.
This is a great shot here. This little sequence of her walking down the halls of the CIA and all these former white guy directors that she's serving under. It's wonderful.
I just want to say I've been counting. She said I or me 17 times so far in the first minute.
I am I'm a tool of mass murder, a tool of torture. I am intersectional.
Yeah, but what about the place you're
working? I am a walking declaration. A woman whose inflection does not rise at the end of her sentences, suggesting that a question has been asked. I did not sneak into CIA. My employment was not and is not the result of a fluke or slip through the cracks. I earned my way in, and I earned my way up the ranks of this organization. I am educated, qualified, and competent, and sometimes I struggle. I struggle feeling like I could do more, be more to my two sons, and I struggle leaving the office when I feel there's so much more to do. I used to struggle with imposter syndrome, but at 36, I refuse to internalize misguided patriarchal ideas of what a woman can or should be. I am tired of feeling like I'm supposed to apologize for the space I occupy rather than intoxicate people with my effort, my brilliance. I am proud of me, full stop. My parents left everything they knew and loved to expose me to opportunities they never had. Because of them, I stand here today a proud first-generation Latina and officer at CIA. I am unapologetically me. I want you to be unapologetically you, whoever you are. Know your worth.
Because we don't apologize.
Command your space.
Yeah.
Some like 35 mentions of I or me.
Yeah. Talk about the individualism there. I mean, I don't want to get too far into her psychology, but when she said she used to suffer from imposter syndrome. Okay, I'm not going to say it. Go on.
No, I mean, this is the type that I think this agency does, and these agencies, intelligence agencies in general, appeal to well-testing broken people, honestly, that don't have an identity outside of like their narcissism and maybe some feelings toward their family. And like that, you could talk about what I'm like, and not talk about this agency, what it's doing to democracy worldwide, ongoing. Like, and that's what the CIA needs for personnel. They need somebody who is just thinking about them and what this means for them and their career ladder, because that's otherwise you end up leaking stuff.
Yeah, looking outside that, it's going to be hard to achieve the missions that you're responsible for.
You and it felt a lot like, and it's probably the same kind of psyche that it appeals to. Though, I mean, I don't know if there's any commercials out there, but the same sort of things are said by people who are caught up in that whole like entrepreneurial hustle community, like the whole world of like constantly like running your own business or running like 10 different businesses at the same time and working 18 to 20 hours a day and like bragging about it as if that's a healthy and good thing. Like it was the same sort of thing to me.
Yeah, this is also like a similar dynamic you would hear with like quote unquote, or people who think they're good cops.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're like, oh, actually, this agency's been open to me. It's like because you aren't really challenging it.
But then it comes back to the individualism there.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and I love how she's basically that more female prison guards meme essentially come to life. More female, intersectional, cisgender, Latinx, torturers, and coup, and government overthrowers in government.
I almost lost it when she was going through those all. Like I just couldn't believe. I actually had not seen the ad. I mean, I'd seen it pass by the feed. I just couldn't bring myself to watch it until just now when you all forced me to watch it, like some sort of CIA torture program.
I want to give credit to the comedian. I think I sent the clip, guys. I'm not sure if we have it. This comedian who did this amazing job, basically making fun of this. I'm trying to pull up her name here. But she did just like a 50-second clip where she, Blair Erskine. Just take a listen to this.
Like other girls, I've never done what the patriarchy wanted me to do. When I was a little girl playing Marco Polo in the pool with my friends, I would hold their heads underwater and make them tell me where polo was. You know what I mean? When we played I Spy, I would always spy the communists, right? I would always find the communists. And so just things like that. In college, when other girls were doing acid, I was the one giving them the acid, and then I would psychologically torture them for information. And so I've always just been a little bit different. And that's why I joined the CIA. If I could go back and tell this little baby girl something, I think I would tell her that, women can do murder too. We can do a little murder too, if we want to.
Blair Erskine, legend.
I don't know. I'm not comfortable with that. It reeks of white feminism to me, not respecting a strong Latinx woman, cisgender, taking on her role at the CIA. I don't know what this white feminist bullshit's talking about here.
One last little thing I picked up on in there, like of word choice of diction, was that she used the verb to intoxicate people, and I was like with her positive attributes, and I was like, that's one way of describing the work, I guess.
And yeah, I don't know. I don't trust her either, Bender. She didn't even announce her pronouns at the start of the video.
Right. It reeks of white supremacy to me. Liberal white feminism over here. All right. She ain't woke like the CIA. The Central the Central Intersectional Agency.
No, the cisgender intersect.
Oh.
You can see. Yeah. Well, then, no. I'm actually, unfortunately, quoting a Sean Hannity graphic there. Womp womp.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's already been done. I'm just, riffing here. You want to go to the? Oh wait, you had another clip you wanted to get to, right?
Oh my God, yeah. I guess we're just going full bore today.
Let's do it.
So, I don't know if you guys heard Caitlyn Jenner.
Oh right. Oh boy. Oh. I mean, listen. If I was running for California governor, the first thing I would do to appeal to the state is go on Sean Hannity's show. I mean, obviously a swing and a home run right there. Not a miss at all.
She did, and she had an incredibly relatable story that I'm sure the average American, the average Californian can understand. Just a folksy anecdote about somebody she knows, which is really informing her policy positions. Let's take a listen.
California. My friends are leaving California. Actually, we're at my hangar. The guy across right over from me, he was packing up his hangar. I said, "Where are you going?" And he says, "I'm moving to Sedona, Arizona. I can't take it here anymore. I can't walk down the streets and see the homeless. I don't want to leave." Okay, either I stay and fight, or I get out of here.
So
my hangar.
Yeah.
Oh, my hangar.
I don't know if you guys heard it there. She said her hangar neighbor, meaning when she goes to fly her plane, we all own planes, maybe not big planes, but we all own a few planes that we fool around in. Her neighbor on that hangar, I mean, she's not that rich. She's not a billionaire, so she's got to share a hangar. Said that moving to Arizona because they can't keep looking at the homeless. So
the guy who sold me my yacht, he's talking about leaving. My butler is already given his 2-week notice. I mean, we're dying over here in Cali.
Yeah, I mean, and because essentially what really informs regular people's lives is when they are unable to escape just the appearance of homelessness. I mean, that's the number one thing, right? Like, that's a relatable trait, just to pick up and move to another state because you see homeless people around you. But,
how many homeless people do you can you guys guess, or do you know, are in America right now? About 600,000. How many empty homes are there?
Yeah.
A lot.
Millions.
Over 16 million. The reason there are homeless people is because there are people with plane hangars and plane hanger neighbors. Rich people. Rich people are the reason they're homeless people. There's there who owns this housing stock and is holding it for assets and keeping homeless people out of it.
Yeah, and just to give a sense of who Caitlyn Jenner is. Caitlyn Jenner, when she came out as trans, went on Ellen's show and expressed that she was still not sure about gay marriage, which, by the way, had been in the public consciousness for many years. But she decided that being trans was the right decision for her, and she felt she was Caitlyn always inside, and she wanted to make that transition. But she could not fathom the idea of gay marriage. She said, and I remember this back in the day, she basically said, why can't they call it something else? That's how myopic, that's how self-absorbed and vapid this human being is.
Well, in that same Sean Hannity, well, not the same segment, not the clip that we had, that was the whole clip, but in that Sean Hannity segment, they were also talking about trans issues. And Caitlyn Jenner, she said that she wants to be like the biggest role model for trans women. And then in the next breath, she goes ahead and says that trans girls should not be able to play girl sports in the state of California.
Yeah, we'll watch that. Still,
but okay. Girls, transgender sports, yes. People that like Joy that say the wrong thing.
Joy that says, I mentioned a second ago, my mom sometimes, when she gets upset, I don't have a problem with that. The community has a bigger problem with that than I do. I stick with my statements that I made. I think we have to make sure that the integrity of girls' sports is there. I think that's extremely important. But it's there's more to it than just what I said, because I just said biological boys in sports. There's more to it than that. And I think in the future, I will explain more of that. But for me, as a trans woman, I think role models are extremely important for young people. Trans issues people struggle with big time. Our suicide rate is 9 times higher than the general public. And for me to be a role model for them, to be out there. I am running for governor of the state of California. Who would have ever thunk that? We've never even had a woman governor.
But some are mad at you.
That's I don't, you know, I move on. I want to be a role model, and I think to be a leader. And I think the most important thing as a leader that you can do is your compassion, your honesty, and I think that sometimes is very lacking in politics. So I want to be an example to all people, not just trans people, that this is what you can do.
This is nonsense. But I mean, like, there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing. And why she pisses me off so much is because when the average person in America thinks of a trans person, she's the first person that comes to mind. And she's done absolutely nothing positive with that platform. She has not advocated for trans rights on some sort of governmental level. She supported Trump in 2016 and kind of walked it back when he was putting out all those anti-trans bills. And speaking in that fashion. But now she's running for governor of California for what? So that more of her friends don't leave. They're playing her playing.
So the show has another storyline?
Yeah,
like,
so,
why the fuck do I care you're running for fucking governor? Are you shitting me? You're going to ignore the substance of what we're talking about and say, but I want to be a role model, so I'm running for governor? I mean, this is celebrity brain. What are you talking about?
The community that you represent says you are speaking out against something they care about, but I want to be a leader and I want to be a role model, but I don't want to listen to them, those people.
Right. That's the thing. Like, she wants to be the role model for the trans community, and one of her number one issues she's bringing up is not letting trans women play women's sports. I mean, are you kidding me? Also, did you catch that? Did you catch that she separated when she said, "Oh, we haven't even had a woman governor yet," as if she God forbid became the first governor of California, she clearly wouldn't consider herself to be the first woman governor, even though that's what trans women are. They're women. I mean, she would view herself as a trans woman, not just another, you know what I mean? Like, she's even separating it there in turn, and that's also against how the trans community sees themselves.
Yeah, and how vapid it is also, and how disgusting it is when she mentioned that thing in the first clip about homeless people. The rate of homelessness for LGBTQ youth is way higher than regular people. So she doesn't see herself primarily as trans as the number one thing. She sees herself as a rich person as number 1, 2, and 3. And that's what's so gross about it to me, because if she was actually interested in the primary issues that affects her ostensible community, she would not look at homeless people with disdain, because this is a plague on the lives of so many trans people in this country. She is running to be yet another rich oligarch and protect her interests, essentially. And she's not going to get anywhere. No Republican's going to vote for her. No Democrat's going to vote for her. So this is another vanity project. But what grosses me out about it is that she wants to position herself for her own self-aggrandizement as some sort of public figure when it comes to trans issues, and has zero interest in representing any issue other than let's protect the wealthy.
Right.
I think that,
the first thing she brought up was the guy who runs her hangar.
Yeah. I mean, the role she's trying to model to trans youth is don't be so hysterical, basically. Like, I don't know how else you could, like, completely ignoring what, and even in her words, what the community says on issues, because she's above it. I mean, she's soaring above it in some sort of private jet, I imagine.
Right. Well, maybe not anymore because her hangar is no longer being run by her guy.
It's literally someone else who has a private plane. I think that's what she was trying to say, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
She's not going to win. So, but still, it's a look into the mind of how these conservatives think.
Yeah, and again, it's like,
and it shows you going back to the CIA video that all the identity politics and wokeness and in the world doesn't make you one of the people. I mean, she might as well do a CIA video.
No, that sort of a narcissistic personality is totally what the CIA wants.
Yeah. Oh, she'd be great.
All right, let's I don't think we have time for any more calls, folks. Sorry, we only took one call today. Oh well, it happens. Retcon in the IMs. Sam always puts my 3-month-old to sleep. The second Binder started talking, she woke up and seemed incredibly alert. Oh, I'm going to take that as a compliment. And also, I hope you wonder now about how my kids feel having to be under the same roof as me. Comrade Mario says, don't hate on MMA, Matleck. The only true people's sport.
I'm not hating on it, but I also don't really like to watch people bash each other's brains out. Unless the guy, if you tell me one of the guys is racist, then I will, and then he loses, I'll watch the highlights to that.
Oh, well, you're in luck, Matt. There is a never-ending supply of racist MMA fighters.
Oh, wait, I'm starting to see the appeal of this now.
Really quick, just Matt, someone said I said regular people. I think I meant like regular non-wealthy people. I didn't mean.
Yes, I hope that's what. Yeah.
You meant common folk, whether
they be non-reality shows celeb.
Yes.
Hope that was clear to everybody. So that was not the yeah.
It's completely clear to me. So being that you play to your dumbest audience, it was completely clear to everybody too. Dave Rubin dating profile says, Emma, your view. Ooh, here we go. Got a little bit of a. Not gonna have time to really let Emma unleash here, but Emma, your views on Tom Wilson are BS. Panarin jumped on Tom Wilson's back. He started it with Tom. Tom had every chance to destroy Panarin, and he just held back and threw him on the ground instead. The Rangers are more mad that Panarin got injured. Sidney Crosby did pretty much the same thing to a Flyers player the day after. And again, this is from what I assume is Tom Wilson's alt, especially being that he calls himself Tom every time he mentions him. But go ahead.
Nothing to say to that. I mean, I'm not like, it's like gaslighting about the situation. Panarin retaliated after he choked Buchnevich and punched him in the back of the head, and that's what happened. And even like, I have Islander fan friends. I have everybody. There's nobody who thinks that the Rangers were in the wrong here, except if you're a Capitals fan, which I imagine this writer is, or this IMer is.
Unemployed Zoomer says Netanyahu is the Putin of Israel. I don't know about that one. Probably have to expand more on that. Dr. Scrubworth.
I mean, exactly. When you make analogies, at least highlight what sort of essence you're trying to draw out with the analogy, because otherwise it just seems like you only know a few world leaders.
Right, and I'm gonna actually say that Netanyahu probably worse on quite a few things.
Yeah, I think so too.
Dr. Scrubworth, dignity in work is a classic phrase to excuse bad pay or working conditions, right? Angela says that governor, speaking of the governor of Montana, got his whole routine from Australia. That's how Scott Morrison deals with welfare payments. Yeah, I'm sure this is something that the right wing uses all across all over the globe. You know, this is nothing new. It's just, I thought it was, he was quite honest and open about it on national television. That's what I found interesting about that clip. Sammy Key says, I dig Matt Leck. You hear that, Matt?
Well, thank you.
Sneering Atheist says, speaking of the James O'Keefe video, a terrible thing to do to a great Prince song. Amy Fair follows up. Please tell me Prince's estate is suing O'Keefe. Angry Vaxxer says, Angry Xer, excuse me, says Prince was defamed by that music video. Kinch says the Prince estate might have some problems with the blatant ripoff of controversy or parody. I mean, that's the thing. I'm sure. It's clearly this is really the Prince. Destroying a good Prince song has really hurt our audience's feelings, but this is going to clearly fall under parody. I think they don't have a case here, but who knows? Maybe they'll decide to go after it. Scott314 says, you guys should plug Timba on Toast video series regarding James O'Keefe. He did a great breakdown.
So good. Yes. Thank you.
I'm not familiar.
Yeah, Timba on Toast, TIMBAH .on.toast on YouTube. He did it. One of my favorite YouTube sort of essayists did a great 3-part takedown of James O'Keefe. That's really exhaustive. And yeah, Timba's a great follow. He makes his own beats too. He looks like a UK dubstep guy, so he's got really great taste in music. I definitely go watch that. I actually realized I don't think I've finished all 3 of them, but he also did. He's the guy who did the Dave Rubin My Brain Still in Recovery Mode. Remember that documentary that originally isolated that clip? He's actually the originator of that. So Timba on Toast.
I don't know if being a UK dubstep guy is an indicator of a good music taste.
Oh, UK dubstep is good. That's why you put UK on it, because US dubstep you get like the Skrillex or whatever that band you like.
Dubstep or deep house?
Well, deep house sounds better, but I feel like I usually see dubstep. But
I don't know if I want to even consider.
You like that horse, Matt? What was that band? That new band? That crazy
Gex?
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Any sort of shade at UK dubstep when you like 10,000 Gex or whatever the hell it's called. No offense to those guys, but I'm a little bit too old for it, I guess.
You're too old for it. What am I?
I don't know what went wrong with you.
Band.
I think I have a theory that it's you have a kid and somehow like watching children's shows make you.
That's true. That could definitely be part of it. I mean, I'm listening to Blippi and the Wiggles all day, every day.
Exactly.
Interestingly, though, a complete opposite of that, my daughter all of a sudden really into the Addams Family theme song at the age of 2, almost 2. I don't know where that came from. Well, she saw the new Addams Family movie that came out in 2019, but yeah, really.
It does slap.
It does. Bandangino says, one of my favorite James O'Keefe moments was when he tried to plant a fake Roy Moore sexual misconduct story in the Washington Post and totally got caught.
Oh, yeah.
I totally forgot about that one. And it's the perfect one to bring up in his video where he's talking about, does the truth believe in me or do I believe in the truth anymore? It's like, are you kidding me, buddy? Your whole shtick is that like you lie, first of all, but then one of your most famous failures is when you tried to lie to a legitimate news organization and they immediately called you out on your bullshit because you didn't know how legit news organizations worked. Like they immediately knew that he was planting a fake Roy Moore accuser because they did journalistic work, which he was not aware of. Like the only way you thought that was going to fly is if you thought all it takes is for someone to go up to a journalist and be like, this person assaulted me. And they're going to go, why? That's a story right there. Tell me everything. You know, that's not how it works.
What that proved is that James O'Keefe's initial success was luck, not any like actual sense of cunning. He just puts himself out there and he occasionally gets somebody to say something on camera.
Right. Rabbit from Boston, and it's the final on that James O'Keefe thing. James O'Keefe just massacred one of my favorite Prince songs, Rest in Peace, King. Cap'n No Fun says, you think the CIA murdered Fred Hampton because he was commanding his space without first internalizing misguided patriarchal ideas? Oh yeah, but I mean that's it. He wasn't obviously Hampton wasn't sufficiently intersectional enough. He forgot to announce his pronouns at the last meet, and it was a big no-no. They just couldn't take it anymore. Oh my God. Ed Hominem says that CIA commercial is very much a continuation of an army of one, right? Yeah. Jerry Rafferty Groupie says, very curious what the woke CIA girl boss's lineage is and whether her parents are from a country with a history of American anti-leftist intervention.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. That's, I think, the key point of like, if you're going to bring your family up at all, I think that is really important in the context of them coming to this country and like what class they come as. I mean, the famous, right-wing Cuban example.
Right. Tequila Comunista says, well, if it isn't Matt Binder, how's Mama Bear Nancy Pelosi doing, Binder? I'm sure you're in frequent communication with her. She's actually been pretty quiet lately. I mean, even on a public scale, guys, right? I mean, I haven't heard much from Queen Pelosi lately. Been sort of back, just eating that ice cream.
She said she doesn't like Facebook that much.
Right, that's true. Right. Flair Child with a great point. How many homeless can live in that hangar? Right. Illuminati Kid says Caitlyn Jenner is the Phyllis Schlafly of trans issues. That's
great comparison.
Yeah. Now that's right. That's
there you go. Yeah.
Hot gay fleshy apparatus has to hit you, Emma. We're just simply going, quote, regular people dash Emma. Quoting you right there. I don't know why.
That's I think that's what I was responding to.
Oh, you saw that? All right, but they said with love, so clearly you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Demian says, Matt, thoughts on Orange Cassidy? Just discovered his brutal wrestling style. Too much to talk about right now. We got like a minute or two left. Ask me tonight, youtube.com/Matt Binder on Doomed, and I will talk about it for as long as you'd like. One or two more IMs here. Thames Darwin says he is Timba is A-list YouTube. Jerry Rafferty Group says Matt Leck 100 Gex hater confirmed.
It's just a lot.
All right. And the final, here we go. I got to read Kowalski's here. I'm on Team Pfizer. My immediate family is vaccinated, so that's good. Great to hear.
So basically, Angela Merkel says she's not going to support the vaccine waiver, which means that the Pfizer-BioNTech technology, despite being over 90% publicly funded, probably not going to be shared.
Is that what that means?
Yeah.
Are we sure about that? Just because of Merkel?
Because BioNTech is German. I mean, I have to look more into it. I sent it in the chat, but it broke while we were on air. She's a girl boss, huh?
No, but isn't it a WTO decision? And they're just one. Am I misunderstanding? Maybe
Might have to follow that up tomorrow.
Yeah. All right, and the two more IMs, and then that's it. Hopefully, I talked my 21-year-old cousin into watching Left Reckoning. Rock on, Madden David says Flair Child, and the final IM of the day from Sam's Hunchback. James O'Keefe must be ecstatic that Emma noticed his gains. Folks, that's the show for today. Tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern time on my YouTube channel, a Doomed with Matt Binder live stream, youtube.com/Matt Binder, 9 p.m. Eastern time. It'll be on doomedcast.com for the podcast version afterwards if you can't watch it live. Also catch Matt Leck's Left Reckoning tonight at 8 p.m., right?
Correct. Yep. And also, Nomiki has Jason and Pascal from This Is Revolution on right after our show. So go check that out.
Perfect. All right, folks. I will see you all next week. The rest of the MR crew will see you all tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know some